So you've been putting off thinning out that crazy, shiny, beautiful Damascus knife that you've got because you don't want to mess it up. Don't worry, it's probably time that it got thinned, and I'm gonna show you exactly how to bring that beautiful shine right back. If you do need to learn how to hot rod your knife or thin out your knife, which is the step before this, check out this video because you're gonna need to do that before you do this step. I know you're probably used to seeing the other Japanese guy, Naoto, in this spot, but today you get half the Japanese, double the height. I'm Jacob. I'm gonna be teaching you today how to basically restore your Damascus, either an acid etch, which is this kind of crazy dark Damascus that you get, or some shinier Damascus, something like this, which is gonna be super fun. If you've already thinned out your blade, you kind of want to have a stone that's really hard and really even. So personally for me, I like to use a Naniwa 600, which is a little scratchy, but it's going to make that bevel super nice and even. And then from there, that's when you can start this more aesthetic reparation process. First up, we're going to do the shiny Damascus. Now this is a Tojiro Atelier, which is a super awesome knife by a super awesome company, and it's really, really beautiful. However, I've already thinned it out, so it doesn't look as beautiful right now. This strategy is gonna work for anything that is shiny and Damascus, lo and behold. Something like the Haruki Zanpa or the Goma, or like a Masakage Kiri. Those are all really shiny. This is what you wanna do to bring back that Damascus. Today, I'm gonna be using a few things for this. I have some Suihiro polishing powder. I'm using the 600 grit or the yellow package. That's the one that I prefer. Some people use the 320 as well. Doesn't make a huge difference. I find the 600 gets it a little bit shinier. Got some auto sole here, which is really funny to have when you're doing any knife work, any steel work, right? It's made for cars, but we use it all the time to bring back Damascus. It kind of brings like a dark gray color back to the non-shiny parts of the Damascus. And then I've got a cork. Yes, a wine cork. I'm gonna dip it in water. I'm gonna leave that a little bit wet, and I'm going to use it to apply a little bit more pressure with some 1000 grit sandpaper, which is kind of the key to all of this because this is what's gonna be doing most of the work today. So, first things first, I need a flat surface because this is going to sit very flat, because if I sit it like this with the handle on the table, it's got this whole blade is still sticking up like this, and that is not something that I want at all. So I'm gonna hang the handle right off of there so that the blade sits flat and I can apply pressure right here to really contact that bevel on the table. I'm gonna add a little bit of auto sole first. Now this, a little bit goes a long way. So first I'm going to just add a little bit. Now, not a crazy amount, maybe like a dime shaped little dollop so that I can spread it all along the edge of the knife here, and it doesn't need to be too much. So then I just take my finger, spread it out a little bit. You can see that it is really spreading out along the knife here. Now that I've got it nice and spread out, I'm gonna use a little bit of this Suihiro polishing compound as well. Now I'm gonna just kind of take it and I'm gonna just sprinkle it on the edge there, and that should be enough to really get me through the entire side of the blade. So now to take my sandpaper and my wine cork, which I am gonna get a little bit wet. So instead of getting it wet, I'm just gonna do a little tiny drop of water on the sandpaper, just so that the wine cork sticks to it. That's literally the only reason. And then I'm gonna take it and I'm applying a fair amount of pressure. I'm not really trying to ream on it. I'm not white knuckling on the side of this cork, but I am applying a fair amount of pressure to it. You can see, I'll just go up and down the whole length of the blade, as Takeda would say, back and forth and back and forth, until it gets this kind of crazy dark gray color. And once it's almost matched up to the kind of kurouchi on the side of this blade, that's when I'm going to stop and give it a wipe off and just see where I'm at with the contrast. So that's probably pretty good. So as you can see, it kind of matches up to that kurouchi. It's a little bit lighter of a color, but this is kind of a good indication it's completely changed colors. It's a great indication that I'm probably going to have a really nice contrast on the Damascus. Never wipe with the blade into your cloth. Don't be dumb. It's still a sharp knife. Take that, set it down, give it a really good wipe. Obviously you can see that it doesn't look brand new, but it does look a lot closer than what it looks like when you just take it right off the stone. It does have that little bit of contrast between the layers of steel. You can see that it's still pretty shiny, and you can also see that that dark kind of cloudiness has come back as well. Now you won't be able to get it perfect. It's not gonna look exactly the same as when you first bought it, but you can get it darn close. If you look at the other side, you can see that it's still pretty battered. You can still see the layers, but you can see how there's little lines and different unevenness from the stone, and how there's little scratches and things like down here. You can see how it's kind of cloudy and then shiny and then cloudy. And all the AutoSole and the polishing powder do is make that all consistent and then give you more of the contrast in the actual Damascus itself. It is literally that easy. It's not difficult at all, and I know that it seems daunting, but I promise, super easy, super simple, and you're gonna be really pleased with the results. Next method, way scarier, and you need a little bit more equipment for this one. This is ferrochloric acid. It is going to oxidize and darken up parts of the Damascus. And when you see something like a Kumo or a Kobayashi Damascus or something like that that has this crazy dark and also shiny Damascus, that crazy contrast, that means that it's been acid etched. So if you take a look at it before, because I can't do one side at a time on this one, you can see that I've thinned this one out just along here. You can see that there's some shiny bits, some dark bits, and then there's up here where I haven't actually touched yet. I say yet because you're going to touch it in a second here. And if you see the other side, even more aggressive, super, super shiny down along that bevel. Now this is actually a flat ground knife, so I'm impressed that it's as flat as it is, but equipment wise, the vat. You need a whole bunch of ferrochloric acid. You can do this with gloves and your finger. I've done this before. If you just have one of those little bottles, you can just pour it on and kind of spread it apart and then neutralize it after. Speaking of neutralizing, window cleaner. That's what neutralizes it. So you need to have this ready. There's been situations where I have forgot to bring it, and then I dip the knife and I run because I'm like, it's gonna eat away the steel, because that's what it does. That's how it gets that really, really dark color. It's actually eating it slightly. If you leave it in for too long or leave it on for too long, then you've got this weird texture of Damascus that you don't really want. Safety goggles on my face, because if I get this in my eye, I'm having a bad time. And of course, some gloves, because again, it is corrosive. Now it's not gonna kill you if it lands on your fingers. It is a little uncomfortable. It doesn't like immediately start eating through your fingers, so don't worry about, I'm not just gonna dip my fingers in here, but if you did do that, you're not gonna die. You're just gonna be very uncomfortable for about a week. We are using ferrochloric acid and a mixture of that and vinegar, which is so just diluted a little bit with vinegar, which is just a less aggressive acid, basically. That is gonna give us a much slower reaction, so we have way more control over what's actually happening to the knife. Now, this vat that it's stored in is a screw so that it doesn't leak all over the place. This is kind of like a chemical storage unit, right? So you can see it screws right off there, and this is just made out of PVC and contact cement. I'm sure you can just go to your local hardware store and find stuff like this to build one of these, but it's really good to just have something that's nice and safe that you can keep your chemicals in. Ferrochloride, don't breathe this. My first step is to screw this back on and put it to the side. Because first I need to take a little piece of 1000 sandpaper that I totally didn't talk about in the gear rundown, a little bit of water, and I need to just even out the side of this knife. Now even it out in a way that it looks you know, not crazy even, because you're not going to be able to get it all looking the same color, but you want a little bit of texture on the side of your blade so that the ferrochloric acid will actually stick to it. So I'm going to do both sides here. If you own one of these knives, you're probably cringing and screaming at the screen right now saying, what are you doing? Now, I promise this is part of the process. Please just trust me. I've done it a couple of times. When I say a couple, I mean a lot. And it will come out looking a lot more even if you do this part of the process. So you can see that it looks a little more even. There's still some uneven spots, but it's a lot more even than it was. Same with the other side. Not the kind of acid. We are using ferrochloric acid and a mixture of that and vinegar, which is so just diluted a little bit with vinegar, which is just a less aggressive acid, basically. Here's the formula. That is gonna give us a much slower reaction, so we have way more control over what's actually happening to the knife. I wanna make sure I have a really solid grip on this handle because I don't wanna drop it into the acid fully. I'm gonna get as far up to the tang as I possibly can. I'm gonna get basically like right up to there, but I don't really want to touch the wood onto into the acid. So there might be a little bit of a section where it's a little bit uneven, but I would much rather have that than have basically acid burnt wood. So all that I'm going to do now, get that solid grip on there, into the acid, swirl it around for a second, see just how deep I can get it in there. I hold it in for about 5 seconds just to see with this diluted mix. And then you can pull it out and you can kind of see the areas that are not quite as even as the others. But you can smell it. You can smell it burning. You'll automatically go, oh yeah, that's a smell. Now this one needs a little bit more. We're just gonna do another dip here just to even out the finish just a little bit. I can see, you can take a look at it. Still needs a little bit more. So this acid, this ferrochloric acid, has been sitting for quite some time. Now, over time, it does break down. So the longer you store it, eventually it breaks down, the longer you're gonna have to dip it for. With this one, it's just been sitting for a while, so I need to dip it for a little longer. So if you're at home doing this with brand new ferrochloric acid, maybe dip it for like 3 to 5 seconds instead of my combined 25. You can always go back and do another dip into the acid or another pass with some acid, no matter how you're doing it, but you can't unetch it. You can't take it away if it's eaten all that steel. You would have to grind down the entire side of the knife. And if this feels like blasphemy with the sandpaper, it's gonna feel even worse to take it to an entire grindstone. And back on the dousing with the Windex. Move the water bottle out of the way. Give her a wipe. You'll notice that this cloth is turning a kind of a gross color. Chemical reaction. Science rules. Bing, bang, boom. You have a re-acid etch knife. Now after you do this, it's important to re-put your final edge on. You can see that it actually etched the core steel as well. So you want to actually sharpen this knife again after. Just the final edge. You don't have to re-thin it or anything like that. Just actually take it to like a 3 or a 4,000 grit stone, depending on what kind of knife it is. This is a Bunka. I'd probably take it to a 3,000. And then you have a perfectly, basically brand new looking acid etched knife. As you can see, not difficult at all. Obviously the acid etching requires a lot more safety precaution than doing something with the shiny Damascus, but I will say that the shiny Damascus is a little bit harder to get perfect than the acid, because you can just hold it in acid and then wipe it off after you've neutralized it. So if you want to learn more about sharpening, polishing, doing anything in terms of caring for your knives, check out this playlist. And if you want to see some more videos like this, check out our channel. Remember to like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Nice.
Very nice.
Very nice. Oh, my wife. She's my wife. This is my knife. She's my knife.
Intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting.